I have one of the craziest HOA stories that you've probably ever heard. It involves a Karen, a gay couple, and of course an HOA. You will not believe when this situation implodes. Last year, I'm 26 female, finally managed to buy my first home. I was so happy that I'd finally managed to afford my own place, and I was excited to make it my own. When I looked at the property, it was mentioned that it was in a homeowner association area. And, well, to be honest, I didn't think much about it. I've read some things online about HOAs, but just thought it was people just not getting along or causing problems for themselves. I'm a quiet person and I like to keep my house and garden tidy. So I assumed I would have no problems, and to begin with, I didn't. I moved in, and the following day various people came to introduce themselves, some bringing cake, which was welcomed. The head of the HOA came over to the evening with a bottle of wine and introduced herself. I'm going to call her Karen, because that's what she turned out to be. She handed me a typed copy of the HOA bylaws and told me to get accustomed to them. She said I would have a respite period of 1 week whilst I got my head around the rules, and following that I would be susceptible to fines and warnings for any breaking of rules. I felt like a bit much on my first evening in my new home, but I smiled nicely and agreed to read the documents and return the signed agreement for her the following day. It turned out she lived in the house directly opposite me, which was a little annoying as it meant she was able to see my house more than some of the others. However, I pushed that back of my mind as I had no intention of breaking any rules, so it shouldn't have been a problem. Well, the rules were mostly common sense, and while some seemed pointless, it was just the cost of living in a nice area. My friends had warned me prior to buying the house that HOAs were breeding grounds for Karens, but I just laughed it off. All in all, I was happy with my new home and looking forward to my new life. It took a long time to read the rules. There were pages and pages of things to do and not to do. I mainly concentrated on the things that would affect me in daily life, such as when to put bins out, and restrictions to decorations of the outside home and garden where I could park my car. All in all, I did not see anything I couldn't cope with. I signed the document, and on my way to work the following morning, I put the signed document in Karen's mailbox. I didn't think anything else about it and carried on with life. I spoke to my direct neighbor, Ben, and his wife, Kelly, often as they were doing work in their back garden. We became friendly, and some evenings I would go over and we would have a beer on their back porch and just chit-chat. On occasion, a friend of mine would join us. I'm telling you, it was lovely. Ben told me that Karen could be a jerk when it came to enforcing rules, and would try to fine people for really stupid things, such as leaving your bin out for more than 10 minutes before or after the time allowed. He'd been fined because of a delivery guy that left a package on his front step, and it was deemed unsightly. He laughed it off and said he just paid them to keep her quiet as they were small fines. It was easier than putting a claim in against the HOA. He said that he was pretty sure that most members of the HOA were scared of Karen, and he was pretty sure her husband was as well, because he would always look unhappy and tired. Around 2 months into my life at my new home, I met a girl on a night out with friends. I'm gay, and I've been single for a while. I have a couple of one-night stands, a couple of which were when I lived here, which is relevant later on. This girl, Lacey, was different. She was my ideal woman, small and petite with a beautiful smile and freckles. Oh, those freckles. We took it slow, but she started spending time at my house. I introduced her to Ben and Kelly, who immediately liked Lacey. We became a friend group of 4 and spent most of our evenings hanging out. Lacey began to spend more nights with me, and we had talked about having a trial period where she would move in with me. The morning that the trouble started, Lacey had stayed over, and she left her car on my driveway, which was perfectly acceptable within the HOA rules. My house has a double driveway, so 2 cars were allowed. We left at the same time to go to work and took our own cars as we worked at different sides of town. I walked her to her vehicle and gave her a goodbye kiss. Oh yeah. It was not a full-on passionate kiss, just one of those quick pecks on the lip, and I patted her butt. as I walked away, saying, "See you later, babe." Well, I went to work then and thought nothing more about it. When I got home, there was a letter sticking out of my mailbox that had been hand-delivered with the HOA words. It said HOA warning and fine printed on the outside. I was confused as heck. I could not think of what I've done to get a fine. My bins were in, and there was nothing out of place outside the house. I did not open up until I got inside, and when I did, my jaw dropped. The letter said I was being given a warning and a fine for breaking moral guidelines, and if it happened again, I would be fined, and further steps would be taken. I could not think what on earth I was being warned for. Then it hit me. I kissed Lacey in my front yard. It appeared that the HOA had a homophobic member, and I was not going to pay a dime fine for kissing. Oh, that's just weird. I waited for Lacey to get back and showed her the letter. We went to see Ben and Kelly to show them, and they looked meaningfully at each other. "Oh, it'll be Karen," Ben said. "She's big on moral guidelines. She had a big thing about the age difference between me and Kelly. She said I was disgusting for being with such a younger girl. Kelly's 26 and by no means an innocent child." I said that I was not prepared to just pay the fine and let it go, as it would be admitting that I've done something wrong. I asked Ben how to appeal with the HOA, and I've emailed them to arrange a meeting. They replied quickly, and I have a meeting with them tomorrow evening. I'll update once I have my meeting, but I'll not let a homophobic woman drive me out of my own home. Well guys, Mr. Reddito here. I hope you're enjoying your day. It's always those HOA stories that bring the most drama. We're going to hop into update number 1. There's multiple updates on this story, and let me tell you, things are about to get crazy. Here's update number 1. Well, I went to the HOA meeting last night, and it was an eye-opener. It seems like half of the HOA hate the other half, and no one can agree what the rules should be. It was insane. Karen was there in her role as head of the HOA, and she spent ages talking about how we would never know who sent out the complaints. But it was up to her to ensure that all complaints were dealt with. As the complaint was of a moral nature, she felt it was appropriate to set an example from the start about what's acceptable in the family area, where young children are likely to see. I could not believe that I was hearing, and although there's no way to prove that she was the one who put the complaint in, it was obvious from the way she was talking that she was homophobic. There were a few members who smiled and just rolled their eyes. I had one supporter in particular who seemed to take great pleasure in disagreeing with everything Karen said. He was an older guy, distinguished looking, who had a definite twinkle in his eye as he argued with her. He waited for her to stop talking about upsetting the children and asked, "So, if I kiss my wife on the doorstep, should I expect a similar fine in the mailbox?" "Well, of course not, you're married," Karen replied, as it was obvious. The older guy chuckled and said that they were the HOA, not the morality police, and there's nothing in the rules to prevent couples from kissing in public. He pointed out that my fine was discriminatory, and he would not be surprised if I considered taking legal advice. Well, turns out he's a lawyer, and the HOA members know that. As soon as he mentioned the possibility of a case against them, the members all found the fine unnecessary, and it was removed from my record. The older man winked at me as he left, and Karen looked like she was about to explode with anger. Although I won, I have a horrible feeling that this may not be over, and I've made an enemy with Karen. Okay guys, Mr. Reddito here. The next update, it came out a few months after the last few posts, so it's quite a jump ahead, but let's go ahead and see what's going on now with the HOA. Well, it's been a few months since I've last updated, but I thought you might be interested in the nightmare I've had since the HOA meeting. It appears I've split the HOA, and Karen does not like that her authority has been questioned. In the last month, I've had 6 fines and warnings. The police have been called 3 times, and someone scratched Lacey's car. Although we can't prove it, the fines were for everything from not mowing my front lawn, in a week of storms, my car being on the drive, not the garage, it always has been and there's no rule against it, and a few for bad neighborship, which I don't really know what that means. I've contested all of them, and the bad neighbor one was hard to get out of, but Ben and Kelly supported us. The police, they were finally called, as we had friends over, and apparently we were having a party with illegal substances, running a flop house. What even is that? And being aggressive. Not that one's likely because I saw Karen watching and gave her the bird. I'm fed up with it all. Lacey has suggested we just move as it'll never end whilst we live opposite of Karen, who's going to make our life hell just because we're gay. I did speak to the police about the harassment, but without proof, we can't get anywhere. Karen's sneaky, and although everyone knows it's her, we have no real proof as she hides behind anonymous HOA complaints. Her name is never on any of them. I don't want to move. I love my home. It's mine. I'll not let this old witch push me out. I'm not sure what I can do, though. I'm struggling, and my work and relationship suffering. If anyone has suggestions, I'd be grateful, and I'm thinking of taking legal advice about restraining orders, but I think I'll have the same problem as the police in that. I have no proof of what she's doing. Maybe we'll have to move. Update number 4. Things have got to the breaking point. When we got up this morning, our garden was being dug up by a group of officials in protective gear. I had no idea what was happening and rushed out with Lacey to ask why the hell they're digging up my flower beds. Across the road, Karen stood in her front yard with a coffee mug in her hand and a smug look on her face. The noise and shouting, yeah, I was a bit loud, so I guess that's another fine, Karen. It woke up Ben and some of the other neighbors, and the street was soon full of onlookers. The police turned up not long after and told everyone to get back to their house. There was a risk of chemical injuries. I was so confused. Why would my flower beds cause any chemical injuries? The police told us to go inside and they would talk to us when they've spoken to the men digging up my roses. I didn't really remember going back inside as I was dazed and confused about what the heck was happening. But Ben and Kelly had also come in and sat with us for support. We were all stunned and could not get our heads wrapped around what was happening. The one thing we were 100% sure about was that Karen had something to do with it. Ben was convinced that she had been up to her old tricks, and because she was getting no luck from the HOA, had gone a step further and put in a fake complaint to the city about dangerous chemicals being buried in my garden. What we could not understand was why she would think anyone would believe her that chemicals were being stored in a garden of a home in the suburbs. There's nothing we could do except wait for the police to come and explain what's going on. I have to be honest, there's no way I would have expected what actually happened. Hidden under my roses and summer flowers were sealed cans of chemicals that could be used to make explosive device. I blurted out, where the hell did those come from? Apparently, the police wanted to know the same thing and went under the impression that Lacey and I would be able to tell them. We were asked to come to the station with him to answer some questions. It felt like a bad dream that we could not wake up from. I was so angry, and all I could think was that this had to be something to do with Karen. I wanted to refuse to go, but Lacey managed to calm me down and convince me it would be all right, we just have to go. Answer questions, and they would see it was all a big misunderstanding. We had not buried the chemicals, so it's fine. Well, I wish I could explain better the look on Karen's face as Lacey and I were escorted in the back of a police car. Imagine a child on Christmas morning who just seen the biggest pile of presents ever, and you'd be close. I swear if she could have done a happy dance and cheered, she would have hit it. I would have loved to wipe that smug look off of her face, but what would not have helped anything, would it? I noticed the older guy from the HOA speaking to Ben and frowning. They seemed to be in deep conversation, and I saw the older guy talking to a policeman as we drove away, but caught up in my own problems, I didn't think much about it. In the back of the car, Lacey held my hand, and I had a laugh when she muttered, "I can hold your hand here without getting a damn HOA fine." The drive of the police station seemed to take forever, and we were put in a room and waited to speak to someone. I'm going to type up the next bit later. I'm too tired for this whole thing. It exhausts me. However, I think it's important to document our experience with the HOA as a warning to anyone considering moving into a HOA area. Update number 5, the police interview. I'll write this as accurately as I remember, but it was such a hard day that there may be things that I forgot or conversations that I do not remember word for word. So you'll have to excuse that some of the conversations will be based on the general gist of the conversation, not exact replicas. We sat and waited for the police to question us, just relieved that they had not separated us. We were sat there for almost an hour before anyone appeared, and when they did, it felt like we were criminals. They came up with piles of paper, and I saw that some, well, I should say, most, were all HOA complaints about us. I assume he got those from Karen. He starts by asking us how long we've lived at our property, what did we do for a living, who are we friends with, and general questions like that. We answered everything truthfully, as we had nothing to hide. He then pulled out all the HOA paperwork and went through all of it, asking about the complaints and why there were so many. I told him that we were gay, and there was something on the HOA who was homophobic, and just complained about us for existing. Then the conversation took a turn. He said, "All these must make you angry. I see you have complaints about aggression. Do you get angry?" I replied, "I thought about being angry when someone was trying to hound you out of your home was perfectly reasonable response. We just wanted to be left alone, like anyone else would." He asked us if it made me angry enough to want to hurt people. I told him of course not. That would make us no better than the people who complained. He then produced letters that had been left in Karen's mailbox, apparently. It said the HOA needed to look out, as they would pay, and to watch out for explosions. That was all they said. They were typed and there was no name on it. Karen then contacted the police and told them that the person who was fighting with the HOA had been fined for morality and aggression. She'd gone on to tell them that she had seen us burying stuff in our front yard, which led to the position we're in. All I could manage was to splutter that we've been framed. The only way we had dug in that garden was to put flowers in. Then the fact that we had no idea what they dug up showed that we had part in whatever this was. You could see from his face that he did not believe us. I asked him why would we bury it in our garden. Surely, if we were planning on using whatever was buried there, or something illegal, we would have found a storage place that was safer and away from prying eyes. Burying it in the garden seemed like a way to just draw attention to ourselves, as we would have to dig it up at some point and move whatever we buried. If we've been planning of blowing up the HOA, which we most definitely were now, we would need somewhere to put our plan together and make the explosive device. We had a garage, so it would make sense that we would have hidden everything in there where it would be safe and dry. The police guy said that they would be looking in the garage for evidence that we're building bombs. I told them to go for it. The only thing in there are boxes of junks and spiders. Lacey was much more upset than I was. Well, she's a gentle person, and the stress of the last few months have affected her much more than me. I came out as gay when I was a lot younger than Lacey when she did. I was lucky in that my family were extremely accepting and have never had an issue with things. Lacey came from a more conservative family, and she'd basically been disowned when she came out. So, for her, all the hate and obvious homophobia we experienced recently had brought back traumatic memories for her. This was one of the reasons that I've been so determined to fight back against Karen. Lacey should not have to relive the trauma of her past just because of a bitter woman could not stand two women being in love. About that time, there was a knock on the door, and a woman stuck her head around the door to say that our lawyer was here. That confused me even more, which I did not think was possible, as I did not have a lawyer. A few minutes later, the older guy from the HOA walked into the room, wearing a suit and looking official. He sat next to us and asked to see the proof against us. He asked if they were charging us with anything. The police confirmed that they did not have enough evidence and the investigation was ongoing. The older guy, whose name is Frank, I found out later, said, "Well, in that case, we're leaving. We can talk again when you have evidence enough to charge, but I would suggest you also look in other places, as my client has been subjected to hate campaign because of their sexuality. Just like that, he swooped in and saved us. When we got outside, we could not hide our gratitude. We also said we're not sure we could afford a lawyer. Frank laughed and said, "You know how long I've been waiting to take that Karen down? This one's for free. The satisfaction of getting Karen out of our lives will be enough payment for 1,000,000 moons." I was so tired and confused at that point, I didn't ask how he was sure that Karen was behind this. I mean, I was 100% sure she was, but she'd been behind a lot of things and we could never prove it. I was scared that Lacey and I were about to be sent to prison for this. The rational part of my mind was telling me that they had nothing to send us to prison for, as we have done nothing wrong. But the irrational part of my mind was screaming that we're going to be separated and never see each other again. Frank told us to go home and rest, and he would be in touch once he has all the information together. It turned out that for a long time, Frank had been quietly watching Karen, making notes about her behavior. Originally, he had just planned to have her kicked from the HOA, but he never expected her to go as far as she did. He had been canceling people's unreasonable fines for years, and as a result, Karen hated him. The difference was Karen knew that Frank had a successful law firm, and she was not brave enough to try to take him on. She just tried to get things pushed through without him noticing, and suddenly tried to turn the HOA members against him, so that he would not be able to override all her decisions. The HOA was basically a battle zone. He reassured us that we should relax. He was confident that it would be over soon. As he walked towards his house, he looked back over his shoulders and told us not to even think about moving, as things would be changing. All we could do was wait and hope. Frank knew what he was doing. Okay guys, it's the moment we've been waiting on. Update 6, the aftermath, final update. Dear God, things got crazy. I felt like I was living in some cheap TV cop show or thriller novel. I would never have thought Karen would be so spiteful as it turned out she actually was. She tried to claim we had made her life so hard that she'd been forced to take extreme action, and we had caused her to temporarily go insane. Insanity by the way of your neighbor's gayness is definitely not something I ever expected. I can laugh now because it's all over, but it's been awful, so sit back because this is one hell of a ride. The chemicals that were buried in our garden were used to make explosives if mixed with each other. I was awful at chemistry in high school, so I had no idea what they even were, let alone what they were used for or how to pronounce them. If used correctly, they are fertilizers, apparently. I think the police realized that we had no idea what they were as soon as we were interviewed about them, with Frank at our side. Also, we pointed out where could we have gotten them? We had no access to chemicals. Karen, on the other hand, did. Her husband, the poor long-suffering soul, is a chemist who works for a company that provides fertilizers, straight to farmers and agricultural needs. Frank knew this from the minute he first rescued us from the questioning. He'd known Karen's husband for a long time and knew exactly what he did. He was adamant that Jeff, Karen's husband, would not know anything about it as he was a kind, gentle man who had married an awful, evil woman. He provided all this information to the police and they went hunting for evidence, either to prove it was us or to show Karen set us up. It didn't take long. Karen was caught on camera at her husband's place of work, which she argued was common as often they went to lunch together. However, she was either not aware or too stupid and arrogant to know that what in chemical plants, cameras are everywhere. The risk of chemicals falling into the hands of bad people, or in this case stupid petty women, is too high. We saw the footage of Karen dressed in her suit, looking canisters into the back of her car. She tried so hard to say it was either me or Lacey dressed as her. We're both small and slim, she's built like a tank. There's no way anyone was there but her. I mean, she looked right at the camera. From there, the police looked at the CCTV from houses in the area, and there she was, emptying her car in the middle of the night and digging holes in our flower beds. At this point, let me tell you, I have to give her credit as she was silent. Nobody heard her digging at night, and she had the strength of a horse. I guess hate makes you determined. Karen really had nowhere to go, and she was arrested later that day. She's being charged with hate crimes, which pretty much guarantees her a prison sentence. The other victim in this was Jeff. He was fired for allowing his wife to steal chemicals from his place of work, and even though it was clear that Karen loaded the chemicals on her own, his employer could not be convinced that Jeff was not aware that was going on. He also had his license to deal with harmful chemicals stripped for 5 years. He'll struggle to get another job, as that's all he's qualified for, and I truly feel sorry for him. He is much of a victim of his nasty wife as we are. Frank's helping him with the legal side of things, and Jeff is divorcing Karen, and will be suing for loss of earnings. Karen is, well, fairly well off, so hopefully Jeff will be okay. They had no mortgage on their house, so he can at least stay in the home. Lacey and I talked for a long time about whether he wanted to stay where we were or move and have a new start. In the end, we decided we were staying as we love our home, and without Karen, it'll be a much more pleasant place. So many neighbors have been seeing us and genuinely apologize for what we've been through. It turns out Karen had blackmail material on a lot of our neighbors. She was truly a horrific person. Lacey and I are planning to get married later in the year, and they'll all be invited. A HOA meeting was called with Frank as the acting head. It was discussed that we should disband the HOA as it made so many people's lives hell. But after talking, we realized the problem was the document Karen created, as instead of using it for good, she used it to harness evil. We spent a long time rewriting the rules to make ourselves a safe area and place to live, where we all look for each other. The new rules put in writing that everything can live their lives as they see fit. The only rules are about things such as to get help with repairs and who's responsible for various things in the HOA. It's so much friendlier document. All in all, everything ended well for everyone. Except Karen and, well, poor Jeff. We've made sure to ask Jeff to come to all the meetings and get-togethers, but he never does. I think he's too ashamed that he did not stop his wife. I hope with time he'll find peace and rebuild his life, but for us, it's all over, and we can get on with our lives while his Karen rots in prison. Let's see how our rules work for her there. We have made some jokes that she may become some kind of criminal mastermind and set up a prison version of an HOA. But I'm more hoping she gets a taste of her own medicine. Okay, just when we thought we heard it all, here comes Karen with this HOA drama. I just want to say, if it wasn't for Frank, I think this story would have took a different turn. Thank goodness there was a lawyer involved in the HOA, and he absolutely hated Karen's guts. Guys, let me know your thoughts about this entire situation, this drama we just saw unfold. How exactly would you handle the business? And you know it was just a hate crime because OP was gay. Well, it seems that Karen got off more than she can chew, but I think the true upset character in this story is the poor Karen's husband. He had no idea about any of this, and he seemed pretty innocent. Heck, he's too embarrassed to even show up to the events at the neighborhood because of what his wife has done. Let me know your thoughts, guys. Drop it down below. Subscribe to the channel. Go ahead and smash that like button. Tell your friends, tell your family all about Mr. Radito. Just know I'm here every single day narrating videos, and I would love for you to join me. So I'll see you tomorrow, guys. Have a wonderful day.